right? So this is StatsCan. We can go to other stuff. Now I'm going to go to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics like this. June payroll, 195,000 jobs, but no change in unemployment rate. How's that possible? I want you to be thinking. 195,000 jobs is pretty good. It's actually not very good for the way Canada's behaved in the last 3 years, but it's really good for the US because they've been averaging about 150, 140 or less. So 195 is pretty good. It means like they're actually starting to reduce the unemployment. But nonetheless, even though they got almost 200,000 new jobs, the unemployment rate went up. Tell me why. Tell me why. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, give Kevin and blanking Kyle. Go ahead.
Just because more people came in.
More people enter the labor force, but this is really important. So now listen, because this is important. You watch the stock market long enough, and you will see huge money change by people who don't know what they're doing. The unemployment rate goes up. Oh, the economy's collapsing. No. In this case, the economy is doing quite nicely, and because it's doing nicely, people are entering the labor force. Must be able to read this, right? You cannot simply count on the unemployment rate. So what you guys are going to do is you're going to look at this data, and come August, approximately August 1st, whatever that Friday is, you're going to look at that data, and you'll probably see that data. Do we have an exam or not? No, we don't. When's our exam? 7%? Our final...
17.
No. It's being posted? No, it can't be the 17th. I'm saying our last midterm. When is our last midterm?
August 7th.
August 7th. And August 7th is what kind of a day? What is it? It must be a Wednesday. Is it a Wednesday?
Yep. It is a Wednesday.
Then that means that August 3rd is a Friday, which means come your exam August 7th, you better walk in here and know that data for Canada and the United States. Because I'm just going to say, how did the U.S. do? Like, did they have, what was the change in employment? What was the change in the unemployment rate? I expect you to know. I want you to look at this and think about it. Okay? Good. Now, go and read this thing and think about it. And look at my data in the notes. So let's see now. Back here, we'll get rid of this. Okay. So that understanding of the importance of unemployment, the importance of the employment statistic as opposed to the unemployment statistic, and in particular as opposed to the unemployment rate as the key indicator is very important. Right, everybody? And you have to be able to calculate it for things that I'll give you. Here's examples. Make sure you read this. Notice here, this is the lowest unemployment rate in a particular period and the highest unemployment rate. In August 1981, the unemployment rate fell to 7%. Now you'll notice, by the way, here, the unemployment rate, the lowest it gets to be is 6.5%. We'll come back to that. Almost 65% of the population, or 64.8%, was participating. By 1982, it had fallen somewhat. The unemployment rate went up. These are likely discouraged workers. In the next 8 years, the unemployment rate fell significantly. Look how much the participation rate went up. When there's jobs, people enter the labor force. When there isn't jobs, they tend not to. So there'll be a fluctuation of participation rate as well as the unemployment rate. Up, down, up, down. This graph I need you to look at carefully, particularly the males. It's time for you to know that the party's over. And the sooner you realize this, the sooner you might be able to survive. Otherwise, you'll be left behind. I'm just telling you, it's going to happen. That's just the way of the world. Too many males still think they're important. They aren't. This shows, I'll do it from, we're going to back it up first. I can't quite get it on the page. This is the men's participation rate from basically World War II to the present. You can see at the end of World War II, 85% of all men were in the labor force, and basically less than 25% of women. But in the last 60-some years, you can see women from late 1950s, fewer men in the labor force, more women in the labor force. Do you know why there's fewer men? Because men tend to be less skilled than women. And they tend to retire earlier. Men tend to do more physical jobs, they tend to retire earlier, they're less skilled. Women tend to be skilled. The new jobs tend to favor the people who are skilled, right? You see that just ends in 2004, I've got to update that. But basically today, the percentage of women in the labor force is almost as high as the percentage of men in the labor force, and the number of jobs got every month is more women than men. What is the percentage of women at university now? Is it more than 50% or less than 50%?
Like 55.
Yeah, it's 55. In virtually probably only subjects, maybe physics, math, these are the last outliers. In law, in medicine, there's more women than men. As undergraduates, it's probably approximating 60%, right? Of actual graduates, it could be even higher. So the world is, whereas women, only 20% of women participated now, almost 70% of women participate. Now you just think about that. For all of human history, in the last 50 years, that change has occurred. Why is another matter. But it has occurred, it is over. Women are no longer, that division of work according to gender is gone. You know, it's gone. So, essentially, you know, more women are getting jobs than men. Partly because of the type of jobs, partly because of skill and so on and so forth. But it's just very interesting. That diagram alone, we can spend hours talking about what its significance is. I just pointed out to you. The issue of participation is extremely important. It has vastly changed. Now, categories of unemployment. This is important. You will notice that in Canada, in that period I showed you, the lowest unemployment rate was 6.5%. Wait a minute. I thought there was supposed to be full employment in market economies. How is 6.5% close to full employment? In 30 years, Canada never had less than 6.5% of the labor force, you know, unemployed. What's that? That seems to me to be pretty significant unemployment. In the 1920s, it would be rare for like 2% of the labor force to be unemployed. In the 1950s, 2 or 3%. In the 60s, 4%. Now we're talking about 6.5% as we're going to see as full employment, right? Okay, so let's talk about unemployment. Who is unemployed? The classical position, neoclassical position is the only people who are unemployed are those who don't want jobs. They're voluntarily unemployed. There's a job to be had, I don't want it. So they can't be counted. The only people, but there are some other people who are unemployed as a function of the market economy. The first are called, they call frictional unemployment. These are people who are unemployed because they're looking for a better job. They're working in a fish plant in Newfoundland, and they see a job in Alberta. They leave the job in the fish plant, and for 2 or 3 months they're unemployed until they get the job in Alberta. That's called search unemployment, frictional unemployment. That's not a problem of the market. In fact, that's the market function. We say, you know, resources are allocated and moved around depending upon what industries are expanding and which are contracting. So frictional unemployment, completely understandable. Don't include that. That is not unemployment. The other type of, and that would be like between 1 and 2% unemployment in any country. I can be more specific, I don't need to be. Some countries not, because of different immigration laws. The second type of unemployment that is considered not to be unemployment by the classical, neoclassical economists and even other economists is structural unemployment. This is basically unemployment due to technological reasons. For example, people are unemployed who used to be receptionists, but now we have voicemail. Or they used to be typists, but now everybody has their own computer and types. Or they used to be plasterers, but now we have drywall. Or they used to be, whatever. people are technologically unemployed. And these people might not be able to get a job again because they don't have the new skills. They don't know how to use a computer, for example. Okay, we say that's not the problem of the market. These people literally lose their jobs. But this is not a negative thing, this is a positive thing, because we gain more from the new efficiency of technology than we lose from the fact that these people are unemployed. Then we have in some places, in a place like Canada, very significant seasonal unemployment. People who might be working, you know, cutting down trees in the winter, or they might be, in the winter, for example, in the winter or the summer, they might be, guards at pools, something like that, or at swimming places. Or they might be in the summer, they might be working on roads. These people, or they're working in parks, these people are seasonally unemployed. And again, we'll say that's not the fault of the marketplace, right? It's just that their jobs don't last as long in a climate like ours, a harsh climate. Okay, now theoretically, virtually every country in the world would have something like this adding up to somewhere between 3 and 4% unemployment. Not really though, it turns out, because we can see, 2%, but even today we'd say, no, the United States and Canada could never have less than 3% unemployment anymore. Because those would be people, because of the movement to get better jobs, because of technological change which is becoming more rapid, because of unemployment, seasonal unemployment. But what is the 6.5% then? What is that all about? And what we're interested in is, when we talk about unemployment, we're not interested in these people. Their full employment includes those people. Already? Full employment includes the unemployment of seasonal unemployment, structural unemployment, search unemployment. That is not unemployment when we talk about full employment. Unemployment we talk from full employment is people who don't have jobs because of swings in the economy, swings in demand, recessions, right? Now, I think, and Keynes thinks, and a lot of economists think, that that's a significant amount of unemployment. It goes up and down. But a lot of classical, neoclassical economists say it isn't. That basically, for example, when the price of oil went up in the 1980s, it caused a structural change in the economy that took a while for the market economies to adjust. And there was 10% unemployment, but it wasn't the fault of the marketplace. It was the fault of high oil prices. Okay? So there is an argument that the fluctuation in unemployment is not unemployment. It is either workers not wanting to work for one reason or another, we'll talk about more later, or it's a structural change. But we'll talk more about this later. Read my notes and think about it. Okay? So we are interested in this definition now. The natural rate of unemployment. We're interested in the concept that full employment occurs in market economies, and it is the same as what we call the long-run unemployment rate, the unemployment rate that includes frictional, structural, and seasonal unemployment. It is the long-run capacity rate. We'll talk about these things more. How do you define this rate? The way that we're going to define it, and you need to know by next day, is the first one, narrow, non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. The idea is, and we'll link this ultimately to our concept of prices, it is this. When there is full employment, basically wages and prices neither go up nor go down. They're kind of steady. If there's unemployment, wages go down and prices go down. As you would imagine, if there's unemployment, wages go down. If there's overemployment, that is, not enough jobs for the number of workers, wages go up. So in Alberta, if there's inflation, we say we're overemployed. If Newfoundland, if there's deflation, which means prices go down, we say there's unemployment. So again, I want you to read my notes and look carefully. Don't worry about NCRU, non-cyclical, that's just another way of doing it. We're going to use NERU as a way of measuring full employment. Because I'm telling you, how can 7% be full employment in Canada? And the argument is it is. For structural reasons we'll go into more later, but right now I want to move ahead. Okay. So read my notes, because this is not as a, we're going to keep delving back in this and reinforce it. I'll leave that. Read that quote I'll talk about next day. We talked about this already. There's unemployment rates in Canada and the United States. Oh, what's that doing there? Well, that's an earlier diagram. This one is that diagram there, which I think you can see. Okay. Now, because Young is going to take you through this tomorrow, we better do measuring price indices. Before we do that, 5-minute break, and then we're going to do this. And this is important. This will be 10 marks in the upcoming exam. And the seminar will be tomorrow on price, on measuring inflation. So 5 minutes.